Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind podcast with Hilary Sexton, episode 53. Wow. Today, what are the right steps to start property development? We have a lot of people new listening to this podcast. We thought it would be a great topic for people wanting to know what right steps should I take. So again, joined by the amazing Bob Andersen, let's jump into episode 53. Hello, welcome to episode 53. What are the right steps to start property development? Before we get started, giving away a copy of Secrets of Property Millionaires Exposed. Of course, Bob's picked one of the authors in this book, along with plenty of others. He says go straight to page 121, where it's all about property development. That's where he thinks you make the most money, and why not? But today, giving away this copy to Mark Cohout. So, Mark, this copy's on the way to you. He just joined our community. Great to have you on board, and looking forward to getting to know you even more. Alrighty, so what are the right steps? Oh, well, first of all, thank you, Bob, for giving up your morning.
My valuable time.
You've extremely... In fact, let's start there. Remember, so most of you know that Bob and I, we live together. We had somebody ask us once, they're like, there's a lot of energy going on in that podcast. So I'm like, yeah, well, we're together. I was reading to Bob this morning the difference between, I wrote it down, information is what you can get anywhere, but advice applies to you and is what you paid for. And you just said your time is very valuable because you have such valuable advice to give away or to give out, Bob.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, the internet's free. And like you just said, that's the difference between information. It is the information age and plenty of information out there, but advice, I mean, that's specific to the person. And in terms of advice on property development, it's specific to that particular project, that particular site.
Their circumstances.
And their circumstances, yeah. And, information's fine, but it's just general. And, yeah. So, thank you. Yes, my time's valuable, but I'm more than happy to spend it on one of your podcasts.
Yeah, so advice. And I was reading something, I think it was about Henry Ford, but I don't know. I should get that story because it was a great story. But anyway, let's jump into this.
Okay.
What are the right steps to start property development? And let's have your spiel on this one straight off.
Well, let's spin it on its head and say, what is the wrong step to get started in property development? Because I see that a bit.
Yes.
And I know you have too. And my golden rule is don't start too big too soon. And some people have this dream, have a dream, I should say, and that's great, to have aspirations. Your dream might be to be the next Harry Triggerboff, who owns Meriton, if you don't know.
Thanks for clarifying.
Harry's a very big developer, owns Meriton. I wouldn't know how many dollars worth of projects Harry's done, billions and billions and many, many billions.
More than you.
Way more than me. I wouldn't even pop up as a little dot on his radar, but... that might be your dream, might be your aspiration, but where do you start? And too big is not where you start.
And for what are your reasons for that? And I've got my reasons. So you tell me your reasons that people shouldn't start too big.
Oh, well, look, one of my reasons is around money, and the other one is just around skill, I guess. So, I mean, in terms of money, obviously the bigger the project, the more money you're going to need. Now, it might be pretty cool. You might have $5 million sitting around the bank, and therefore you could afford to start bigger, and you could afford to make mistakes because you've got all that money sitting in the bank. If you lose $1 million, well, you still got $4 million. But not everybody's like that, and what I've seen sometimes is people that try and go too big too soon. And who don't have that money, well, that's okay. The solution's always investors. But the more money you need, the bigger the investor needs to be. So if you're doing a small project, let's say you really didn't have hardly any money at all and you're going to use an investor and share the profits. Well, if you only need, say, $400,000 because you're just doing a little splitter or whatever it is, well, lots of people have access to $400,000, line of credit, money in the bank, super, whatever. But if you're doing a bigger project where you need $4 million, well, all of a sudden, there's not a lot of people walking around that have got $4 million in the bank. And if they did, well, they might be doing something a bit bigger with somebody with more experience.
Or playing with Bitcoin.
Or, well, who knows? They can how to turn 4 million into one,
Yeah.
or 1 into 4. You just got to get your timing right. But yeah, so and then so they've got to think, well, I've got to do multiple investors. The only way I can get my 4 million, I need 20 people with 200,000 or something or whatever it is, and then it's a lot harder, and you've got to get legal if you're going to raise capital like that, and then then you've got to find 10 or 20 investors, and I've seen people just shoot too big a goal too soon. Just around money, let alone skill. So yeah, that'd be my primary reason, and I've seen it happen plenty of times. So what's your take on it?
I love people to have a big goal and a big dream and strive for something, and you and I do that ourselves. We have things that we want to achieve. We've got so many things in the pipeline. We're not just your average property developers or property development educators or whatever under those two umbrellas. We've got things that we strive for, but it's about having that big picture but starting small, because when the picture is too big, it's very difficult to take any action, because the road, the map there is too hard to see. And that's where just doing something smaller to start with is much more achievable, and it builds that level of confidence, and it builds that level of it's a muscle, it's a confidence muscle, it's a practice muscle, and it just teaches you, you don't go and build a retirement village straight off. You really start with something small that your brain can understand and can see as happening.
I knew you'd have a twist on it to do with just psychology in the brain, and that's always the case. Yeah. So I was actually talking to one of our mentoring students yesterday, and they stepped up to a bigger project from what they were doing. It's got a commercial component, it's got a residential component on the top, it's got residential in the back, and they're excited about the prospect of doing something a bit different. Commercial, residential, mixed use, and doing something bigger.
Yeah.
And they're like just a little bit fearful, only because it was bigger, but then not really, because they worked their way up to it.
And probably also just adding to that, Bob, and it's not really a plug, but potentially see it as one if you wish, she knows she can call you. I mean, she did the mentoring program how many years ago, and they did very well. But, she knows that at the end of the day, she just has that person she can phone up for, what was it? Not for information, but for advice, because for that advice that applies to her.
Yeah, and specifically to that project, because it's mixed use, the parking's all different. It's a little bit on the edge of the planning scheme. So, yeah. So
we find that people, and would you agree, well, I'll say we, the royal we, well, people join at different stages. Some people have already done something and realised after hearing Bob talk about how he teaches it, realise that they could definitely do it better, not lose so much money. And we do talk to so many people that say, oh gosh, I wish we'd done it. Even last weekend we had lunch with some people and they were saying, oh, we really wish we did this earlier. But there's that whole just doing it well. They've already done one and they want to do one.
Do it better.
Do it better, yeah.
Yeah, and then eventually scale up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's right. I mean, as you say, people join our program, particularly our mentoring program, at all different stages. A lot of them are new people, haven't done a property development, and they want to make sure their first one's good, because you know what happens if your first one's not good.
No, you don't do it again.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep. And, but, we've got people in our mentoring program that are, building as builders, not as developers, but contract builders building, high-rise apartment blocks. And so they're coming in on a different stage, if you like, looking for different things. But then, majority of people just want to get off the ground and do it well, build confidence. And that's a lot of the people we talk to are beginners in property development. Or sometimes we find people that have done maybe one or two, but not done it well enough. They realise they've made mistakes. They realise they left some profit on the table.
I knew you were going to say that. You always say that. They left some money behind in it. Yeah. They could have done it better.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not insignificant. I mean, if you were due to make $400,000 profit and you made mistakes and you made $250,000, I mean, that's worth celebrating, making $250,000. But, the other side of it is you could have made another 150 or another 100 if you'd done it better. And that's not insignificant either. But, so we do. we do meet people at all stages, and some of them have bigger dreams. Some of them are already on their way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also what happens is when you're on your journey, sometimes the right steps, you might not know what the end goal is. You might not know you don't know where that's going to take you, but it can eventually, once you've done one, like when a great testimonial last week, somebody said, and now I'm living my dream, because he's full-time developing. And so for some people, the end goal is full-time developing. For other people, it's, having a couple of developments running, or even one at a time, just running alongside their day job, if you like. So they have a nicer lifestyle, or,
just building for the future, whatever.
Yeah, heck yes. Some people's jobs allow a lot of spare time.
Yeah, well, just sort of casting my mind around, who we know well. And look, some people are professional people, are doctors. We've had a number of doctors in our program. They don't necessarily want to stop being doctors. But obviously, a lot of them, when they've been around a little while, they've got good income, excellent serviceability. They've got assets behind them. They love property. Doctors love property. And so they might do a project or two on the side. Yeah, but they don't necessarily want to give up practicing as a doctor, because they see that as their life calling. Or they see it as down the track a bit, perhaps, exiting the medical profession. Now, that's just an example of people who are happy enough to keep their day job. But then we meet a lot of people who are unhappy with their day job.
Oh, yeah. There's just so many people in my mind. Yeah. What cracks me up is that doctors practice. Like, that's not right. They shouldn't be practicing on us.
Yeah, you practice the piano until you're good at it.
Yes, you don't practice on people. But anyway,
actually, I'm not so sure about
that. Sometimes people have a job that they're really not happy with, and so getting out of that. But then I was thinking of even, closer family to us. Some people's jobs allow a lot of spare time, allow them time to do research, and allow them, because the job doesn't actually take up, even though they're at a destination they call work, they have that time availability while they're at work.
My mind always gets cast back to a chap called Ross, and you know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
Who developed, I think it was 6 or 7 townhouses at Byron Bay while he was working full-time in the mines at the top of Western Australia. Remember?
Yes.
And he did it in his lunchtime and after work, because being in Western Australia, he was 2 hours behind. So, he might knock off at 5 o'clock, which is really 3 o'clock East Coast.
Yes.
So he had a couple of hours to deal with his project on the East Coast over the phone and at lunchtime.
And even because of daylight saving, he would have had an extra hour. New South Wales.
Yeah, he would have. It could have been a 3-hour difference.
I think we've talked about this before. Oh my gosh, I'll never forget meeting him. He came into one of the 3-day workshops, and we were having a mentoring party afterwards. So we went down, had a bus, and went down to the Barossa. But he turns up looking like a homeless guy. He's wearing like these shorts that were too small. He might have put on a bit of weight. I don't know. I hope you're not listening here, Ross.
And he knows we love him.
Yeah. Oh my God. He's an amazing guy. And he was wearing a t-shirt. He's carrying a Coles bag with like his phone and a pen in it. And he came up to the room.
Some thongs.
And he's exactly.
Real vagabond.
He's terrible. And I said, I thought he was in the wrong place. It's like, oh, this is the property development. He goes, yeah, g'day, Bob. And I was like, oh my goodness, excellent. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So all sorts of people. But I guess the thing is there, he managed it with a full-time job, very demanding, totally remote, the other side of Australia. So look, if you want to do it, you can. But and he's moved on from that as well.
It's taking the right steps. Like my current development is in Western Australia, which is kind of ironic. But from there, as soon as I can, I'm pulling the money straight out of that project and I'm into another. So that's part of being on the right journey, as in, refinancing and, extracting, because it's a keep strategy for this one. And that is right now the right step for me to take, because everybody's step is different. And initially you've got to, for most people, it's develop and sell to build up your war chest, as Bob talks about. But there becomes that point where you can start holding and, good developments, and refinance. And we've got some other people doing similar stuff to that. And that works, doesn't it, Bob?
Yeah. Well, one of my regrets, I
was just going to go down the road
regrets.
of, yes.
That was a tattoo. I was going to get the no regrets tattoo. Never got it, but anyway, that's okay. But
seriously,
on my forehead. No, one of my regrets, I'll say it, is that I didn't keep enough property early in my career.
There you go. There's a tip, guys.
I was young and making good money, developing and selling, and moving, doing pretty well. I should have kept more of the stock I developed.
Yeah.
When I think now, I mean, I did subdivisions and built houses that I sold for $50,000. When I first started. I mean, those houses would be worth $700,000-800,000 now. And I probably maybe couldn't have kept my first few projects because I needed more money, but I could have started to keep more then. I didn't wake up to it till later, because in fairness to me, I've got to find an excuse. There wasn't much education around then.
Yeah.
This is early 80s, mid 80s. My dad was a spray painter, panel beater, so lovely guy, great work ethic, couldn't teach me anything about finance or money. And I just, as we know, just did as best I could. But that's something I should have done. I wish I had.
Do you know what? Even going there, you often talk about your dad. He was all about the family. He provided everything for you. You were the first family on your street to get television and things like that. So maybe the story that's running behind, because we're all driven by the stories, and we learn our stories, from our upbringing. Like you're saying, you're not knowing, because you're such a giver to your family, you were always about providing. And I mean, your children have had a lifestyle and horses and motorbikes. They've had an incredible lifestyle, and maybe that came from there. The selling was to provide a lifestyle for the family.
Yeah,
would you say that?
Well,
would
the family came later. This is back in my earlier days.
Oh, right. But then from then, around that time.
Well, yeah, by the time I got married and started having kids, I had worked it out a bit better to hold some stock. But yeah, lifestyle, I suppose getting off the subject, to me lifestyle is a combination of two things. It's money and lots of it, and the time to actually enjoy it. Either one without the other is not a lifestyle. And so that came a bit later, and we get the cash from the ones we sell. We get long-term growth from the ones we keep. And lifestyle's whatever it is to you. Everybody's got their own definition of what a good lifestyle is. But yeah, I mean, how did I get onto that? Not sure.
We were talking about your regret was not holding stock earlier for longer.
Yeah, and I think that came out of the back of saying, well, look, for most people, you need to sell your first few projects. Yeah. That's probably how we got there. Because often what we're short of is capital. If we have a look at everybody, 3,000 people, whatever it is, plus, done property mastermind development course alone. A lot of those people, excuse me, when they're starting off, they lack capital. Now, if they're too lacking in capital, that's fine. We get investors in up front to help us out. Once we've got enough money of our own, we might not do that if we don't want to. But that's why often, we might sell first 2 or 3 projects, and then by our third or our fourth one, we're going pretty well, and that's when we might start to keep it. But it's an individual thing. If you started doing property development and you already had $3 million in the bank, well, you could start to hold properties from first project as well. Sell some, but keep some.
And even finding investors, Bob, that's an interesting strategy in itself, and we do cover that. I'm actually thinking about running a little bit of a short course on that, because I work a lot with people who need help on it. So if you are interested, maybe reach out and let me know. It will just be a short course on how to get investors, how to set yourself up, what you need to say, that sort of thing. I do the investor, what would you call me, the investor liaison?
Yeah, you do. In our projects.
Yeah, so we've actually got an event this Saturday in Sydney. So if you're free this Saturday, which will be Saturday the 18th of June, from 2 to 5:30, Bob's going to talk about joint ventures and just understanding, what a joint venture can be and how to make that work. But somebody rang me yesterday and said, I can't make it, will we be streaming it? I said, no, the weekend after we are doing Melbourne and it will be recorded. That will be a different one. So that could possibly be something that's available.
In between that, we're in Canberra with a slightly different but related thing as well.
Exactly.
Thursday the 23rd in the ACT.
Yeah, exactly. So all about investing and how to raise capital and that sort of thing. So where was I going with that, Bob?
Well...
the fact that... how to learn how to put investors together so you can do a property development.
Yeah, And you're saying that you're going to put a program together?
Yeah, so if anyone is interested, send me an email because I will let you know if or when I get that together. It will, whether it's just an online thing, but it'll be live, of course. I know people like that. Just let me know.
A lot of people, particularly when they're starting out, they stumble a bit there. I mean, they know they've got to get an investor, but, they're not... What's the approach? I mean, what story do I need to tell? What sort of words do I need to say? How do I get their confidence? There's a lot to it.
There is a lot to it.
And because you're a communication expert as well as a personality profiler, so you could probably you could customise it for all the different people you talk to.
Absolutely, because it's about talking to people in their language, and people need to understand that. Anyway, that's another whole topic that we won't go into right now. It is another topic, but
I'm keen to see you build that.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great... It was just from a conversation that came yesterday from, who was it? Cheryl, actually. Her name was Cheryl, and she lived very north, not near a major city, so it was difficult for her to be able to come on the weekend, and she wanted to know, so that was how that came. So there you go, Cheryl. If you're listening to the podcast, maybe you'll be next week's book winner. So, Bob, can I ask you another question? When you started out, you, like you said, there was no education. There was very few people doing what you did. What was your dream at the beginning? What did you see, and then where did you start? So what was your end result that you wanted?
Yeah, so I came to a conclusion I wanted to be a property developer. Mm-hmm. That came out of an accident where I was on my back for a long time, had a lot of time to think, reorganise my life. I decided I needed money because that's what I virtually had none left of by the time I recuperated. And I looked at property, I looked at shares, I looked at all sorts of stuff, and I decided on property. And then I thought, who makes the most money in property? Because it was all about making money for me at the time. And
he had like $5 left, and he's living with his parents.
Yeah, I did. It's
pretty destitute.
I was back home. I was, recuperating from an accident. It took nearly 2 years, but that's okay. But it gave me a lot of time to think.
Yes.
And I decided on property, and then I decided on property development because I could see they're the people that make the most money out of property. And okay, so I made up my mind going to be a property developer. I wasn't sure, how or where. I looked around for courses. Couldn't find anything about property development. I found, a course on becoming a property valuer. And I even went down that track for a few months and realised that wasn't going to get me there. So I moved to the Gold Coast. I lived in Brisbane prior. And I thought, okay, got to get the leg in the market. And that was real estate. So yeah, I had a vision of I wanted to be a property developer. I wasn't really clear on what that meant long term. Did I want to build a big property development company and become famous and have all staff of 100, or whether I just wanted to do property development and make money. And really my dream was do property development and make some money, because we always think about what we're lacking. When we're hungry, we think about food. When we've got little or no money, we think about money and not concentrate on the lack too much, but how we're going to get it, come up with a plan. And it was that simple. And so I got into real estate because at least there was a leg in the property market.
So there wasn't a picture of, you didn't have I need to get into property development, and you started off on smaller projects, which is the recommendation that we started with, really.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have any education about goal setting or, the stuff that, had I met you then, which would have been impossible, almost.
Might have been. I was in another country to start with.
Well, in another country, in nappies, yeah. But aside from that...
I was definitely out in nappies just.
Okay. Into those little Kimber things.
I don't think they had those things back in those days, Well, I think it was only cloth nappies.
Oh, that would have been, yeah. But, I didn't have the big vision, but I was hungry. And I knew I had to do it. And it was just my hunger and determination that I did have a bit of a plan. At least I knew what I wanted to be. And I had a rough plan of how to get there, although that was quite indirect because I couldn't find a direct path. I had to go indirectly.
Yes. There's so much has changed from them. It's available to way more people to do. You kind of carved a path very early that wasn't available, was it? You did something unusual. Well,
it was learned by trying to reverse engineering things. I'd look at a finished property development and try and work backwards. Well, how did it start? Somebody bought a block of land and somebody ended up with 3 townhouses or a 4-lot subdivision. What's all the stuff in between?
Oh my God, Bob. How much money do you think you left on the table over that time when you had to bumble through it?
Oh, yes, sometimes a lot.
Yeah. Do you wish you knew? Do you wish that you knew the future you back then? Like you could call you up. How good would that have been?
Oh God, yes. I wish. Yeah, well, we sometimes. I have this funny dream sometimes that I'm going back in time, and like, what would I? No, it's not a negative thing. What would I've done differently? But what might I have told myself that may have resulted in something different?
What would you have told yourself?
Well, in those days, one of the things I didn't realise is that markets change. I came into it on a rising market and I did well, and I didn't even understand property markets. That they don't always, and this is on the Gold Coast where you have big swings. Big ups and big downs.
We've just had a big swing now, so yeah.
Yeah, so when it tipped and went the other way, I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
And so I had to tread water fast and like get through, and I did because of my.
Did you look like a duck, like floating around on top, cool as a
cucumber,
so much, but underneath it like going nuts,
legs going like crazy? Yeah. And so as a result, I mean, a mixture of determination, the will to succeed, the will not to fail, and a lot of that goes back to a bit earlier than that in sport. So. Yeah. Anyway, but that's one of the things I didn't realise is markets can change,
and that's possibly going to happen now, Bob, because as we know, like we started off with, information is available, and everybody's an expert, and everybody loves to give advice and tell people what to do. But we've had so many people become very well off or successful due to such a rising market. But that doesn't mean that markets exactly don't. That's not normal what we've just been through, and understanding that is
it was obvious that we weren't always going to have interest rates in the twos, and we weren't always going to have a market that jumped 20+% in a year.
Yes,
those things are aberrations, and they're not necessarily market forces. I mean, that big jump we had in growth, particularly in late 2021, that wasn't an organic thing.
No,
it was created by man or a government or whatever. So you have to be adaptable. I mean, getting off the subject of probably steps, but yeah, it's not always. It doesn't remain the same. We're going into higher interest rates. What's that do? Well, there's a lot of other things other than the higher interest rates to look at. You can't just concentrate on that. You've got to look at supply shortages. Even during the last few months, Sydney and Melbourne have gone back a little bit in terms of their average, dwelling values, but then the other cities have still been trickling up pretty much. Canberra had a month of going backwards. So, there's a lot more to it. Supply and demand, oversupply. Inflation, yeah, it's going up a bit, but it's been extremely low for so long. And that can have some good effects as well. Yep. And not everybody complains when interest rates go up. There's people self-managed superannuants who
they're stoked right now.
Who have I mean, they've been flogged having money at a ridiculously low interest rate. Now they start to go up, and yes, it affects development. It affects people with mortgages, but half of owner occupiers don't have a mortgage. So it's a bigger story than just interest rates.
Than just what they say on Channel 9.
Yeah,
exactly. There's a bigger story than what Channel 9 talk about.
Yeah. So adaptable. But in terms of what are the right steps to get going? My biggie is don't start too big too soon.
Absolutely.
Have a vision, have a goal, and
have that big picture up there.
Yep.
But start.
Have it on your vision board.
Yep.
Meditate on it. But
think about it.
Bring it back to bite-sized pieces, and that might mean starting with a splitter, or a 2-lot subby, or a 3. Mine was a 4-lot subdivision, my very first one, which some people might say, well, that was a little bit ambitious. You should have done a 2. But the thing is...
You had a mentor.
Well, I did have somebody who guided me through that, and it happened to be the landowner, and they also taught me how to do a fender finance deal. So I did that 4-lot subdivision with no money of my own. So, call it luck, but, that's it. It was a small project, and eventually I did build my vision.
Yeah, you got to there. Hey Bob, thank you so much. I think that was some really good information, really good tip of what are the right steps. definitely think big, start small, and all the other information around that. If you're interested in the courses we have to offer, check out propertymastermind.com.au. Going through a little bit of an overhaul of the website, so it could be really exciting to look at.
Yeah.
It's not that it's pretty good already. Also, if you're interested in learning about investments that we have available, you're welcome to email me, Hilary, admin at propertymastermind.com.au. We have things available that you might want to be involved in. So, and we have plenty of people that are interested in that. We have an ebook too you can download, and it explains how being a property developer by being an armchair developer, making good money, is a possibility for some people.
On the investment side of being in a property development.
Yeah, so if you're interested in any of those things, you're welcome to reach out by email. The links will be below, or you can just remember this if you're driving and think, like I do often when I listen to a podcast, oh, what was that again? But anyway, look us up and find out what we have to offer. Thanks, Bob. I think that was really useful. And we look forward to next week's podcast. And I'm not going to tell you what it's going to be about.
Secret.
It's a secret. All right. Catch you soon, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.